Alright guys, and welcome to the final episode, The Lost and Forgotten Railroad Lines of Southern Illinois. We are taking a look here at some other lines that I have not included yet, and unfortunately, this is going to be our final episode for The Lost and Forgotten Railroad Lines of Southern Illinois, because I've pretty much covered all of them at this point. But I'm going to go over the last few that I know that I have not yet included. Let's get this started. From 1902 to 1926, there is an electric rail line in Southern Illinois. A couple of these were around. One of them is the Coal Belt Electric. This would connect the towns of Marion, Herrin, and Carterville, Illinois. Here is a map on my rail guide map of the Coal Belt Electric. Now, as you can see, you can also see CB&Q and Illinois Central on there. But the pink colored lines is all Coal Belt Electric, or CBE for short. And here's what the surrounding areas look like now. A lot has left and a lot has changed since then. CBE was first incorporated on May 28, 1901 by F.S. Peabody of the Peabody Coal Company. It started operating in 1902, running street passengers and their hand baggage from Spillertown through Marion to Carterville and Herrin, Illinois. There was a Y where the Carterville and Herrin lines would branch off at. It was here that the power plant for the lines was built in 1903 and a village, with the post office that was established in 1905. The village was known as Fordville, named after a real estate operator by the name of Wiley N. Ford, and his son, Dr. William H. Ford, who lived there in 1909. And Herbert B. Taylor would take over the operation of two nearby mines, named Taylor 1 and 2, and began to market a brand of coal he called Energy. On April 2nd, 1913, the town's name was changed to Energy. The Iron Mountain Company acquired the Coal Belt stock in 1904 and added a few more miles of track that year, serving a steam engine. Eventually, the Missouri Pacific Company bought the stock and ran the Coal Belt line. The line originally had tracks down North Market, West Main Street, through the square, but was relocated from the square after a few years. Things ran successfully up until World War I. By 1917, there were so many passengers that had to ride the cars, standing up even though there was service every hour from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. The last run was called the Owl Run. More cars had to be added to the Coal Belt system to buy electricity from the Central Illinois Public Service Company because the energy power plant just could not supply enough. But after the war, the road building program started and people began to buy cars from carpools and to work and back. By 1924, the Missouri Pacific got permission to reduce hourly service to once every 2 hours. By early 1926, Missouri Pacific petitioned the Illinois Commerce Commission to discontinue operation on 13.4 miles of the main line and 9.1 miles of the side track of the CBE. It was pointed out that passenger revenue had dropped from $138,858 in 1921 down to $32,363 in 1925. Permission to discontinue the operations was granted in October, and on Monday at midnight, November 15th, 1926, the CBE died and went out of existence. And here we have another one of Southern Illinois Railway's old electric systems. This one here is the Southern Illinois Railway and Power Company Interurban System. Here's a little bit of history. In 1912, the Southern Illinois Railway Power Company began construction of a 1200-volt direct current interurban system. The route would span 15 miles between El Dorado to Carrier Mills. There are towns served by the line besides the endpoints included Wasson, Muddy, Harrisburg, Dorisville, and Ledford. Passengers also included coal miners, as the line passed near several mines as well. Coal and other freight companies were transported along the railway. The SIR&P company operated until 1933, when it was sold to the Central Illinois Public Service Company. The Central Illinois Public Service Company would eventually discontinue the streetcar operations and abandoned the railway. The power plant continued to operate for several years after the interurban line. The SIR&P company did not have much rolling stock here. They had 18 interurban railcars with 4 GE 75 HP motors from American Car Company. And for the railway, they would have 80 to 100 foot wide right-of-ways, except in towns. Their maximum grade was 2.2%, and the curves were less than 5 degrees. Alright, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. This railroad began as the St. Louis and Southeastern Railway. It ran from East St. Louis through Mount Vernon, across the Wabash River, into Evansville. That was the St. Louis division. For the Shawneetown branch, it would branch off at McLeansboro from the St. Louis division and would head 42 miles south to Shawneetown and the Ohio River. In 1874, it took 8.5 hours to travel from St. Louis to Evansville. In 1972, the distance was covered in 5 hours and 10 minutes. On October 15, 1870, rail had been received at Shawneetown with track laying between Equality and Shawneetown underway. The segment between Belleville and Mount Vernon was almost in completion. The East St. Louis Depot building had been connected with the old Belleville Road. Shawneetown Mercury reported that the line from Shawneetown to Equality was graded and tied with rail installation in process. And on October 29, 1870, timber was being cleared with ties ready for grading. On November 12, 1870, the St. Louis and Southeastern Railway was completed to Mount Vernon on November 9th. On December 30th, 1870, the Shawneetown Mercury reported that a large number of ties had been laid in Hamilton County, headed from McLeansboro to Equality. The entire line from St. Louis to Shawneetown is estimated to be finished in 1871 at a cost of $3 million. The last rail on the Springfield and Illinois Southeastern was laid on December 23, 1870 at 12:30, with the arrival of the construction train in Shawneetown at 3 p.m. In 1871, the St. Louis and Southeastern Railway Company and Evansville and Southern Illinois Railroad Company were consolidated as the St. Louis and Southeastern Railroad Company on February 21st, 1871. The branch from McLeansboro to Shawneetown was finished January 1st, 1872, with a new McLeansboro depot located a mile south of McLeansboro Junction with the main via a Y-track. Both freight and passenger services were offered. In 1986, Seaboard System requested abandonment in Illinois for the McLeansboro to Shawneetown segment of the railroad. The exact date that the operation stopped has not quite been determined yet. And in 2006, the Evansville and Western Railway began operating the St. Louis division between Oakville and Evansville, Indiana. The railway hauls grain from Enfield, McLeansboro, and coal from Delafield and sugar camp mines to southern Indiana. And in 2019, the American Coal Company began removal of the rails and steel bridge frames from McLeansboro to Brofton. However, there are still remains of the Shawneetown branch. There are depots remaining, bridges, and right-of-ways. The depot in Dale, Illinois still exists. This is what it looked like then. Here's what it looks like now, and it's being used as a post office and was closed in 2011. Here's an old railroad bridge as well from the L&N Shawneetown branch. Then there's this right-of-way that you can see in Dale, Illinois. There's also this right-of-way in El Dorado. If you're wondering what that other right-of-way was, it's the New York Central Big 4 line. Both of these tracks are now bike trails. The depot, or the Union Station in El Dorado, where the L&N was at, is still there today. If you're wondering about the New York Central Big 4 line, I went over that in part 1 of the Lost and Forgotten Railroad Lines of Southern Illinois. If you would like to check out part 1 and part 2, links will be in the description. What's pretty cool too is that there's actually still a searchlight signal left, and it's right in El Dorado by the bike trail. This is what it looks like. Not only that, there is also the Brofton Depot where the L&N ran at. This is what it looks like now. It's grown in and just worn out, and honestly, this place looks pretty creepy. I would definitely go in here ghost hunting. Alright, so we're back with our buddy Google Earth. You knew this was coming. So here we are. This is the Evansville and Western. This is part of the St. Louis branch. This is just, I'm assuming this is just a little connection for this grain plant. Anyways, here, let's take a look. So right here, this is where the L&N Shawneetown branch was at. This was where the Y was at. You can see the Shawneetown branch would go through here, and this was part of the Y over here. And you can clearly tell that there is a right-of-way right there. Now, the American Coal Company did say that they were removing the rails, but to be honest, that might just be wrong, because there's still rails here in McLeansboro. And let's check the good old Street View. Wow, that is very laggy. I love it. Such high quality. Right here, I'm sure this was part of the rail. It definitely looks like it. As you can see, it would just go straight through up there. Right there. There's more rail. Let's check this street view. Yep, right there. This right here is some rail. Not much left of it, as you can see. Looks like there's a switch right there, but this is the L&N Shawneetown branch in McLeansboro. Just a little bit more remnants for ya. Let's see, is there street view here too? Oh, there is. There is still a railroad crossing standing right here too, I believe. If it loads. Wow, my Google is acting stupid. There we go. There's a railroad crossing right there. There's another one right there too. Yeah, right there. Pretty old. Some very interesting though. But this right here is the L&N Shawneetown branch. Some of the rails are still here. A lot of remains in McLeansboro. There's also a bridge too. There is a bridge somewhere over here. Right there. This is actually a bridge, and there's also street view available for this. So, right there. There it is. This is the bridge for the L&N Shawneetown branch in McLeansboro. Unfortunately, there are no more modern pics of trains on the L&N Shawneetown branch from like when it was still open in the 80s. That's probably a hint right there that the line just probably wasn't very busy in the 80s. There was probably around 5 to 15 a day, but when the 80s hit, it probably all changed. But yeah, that's some other remains. That's just some remains right there, and you can see that the right-of-way would just continue on through. Other than that, it looks like all the other parts of the rails are just gone. Yeah, see? The rail's gone over here. The only part of the rail that actually seems to be left is in McLeansboro. So, yep, here we are in El Dorado, and as you can see, it becomes a bike trail. And then this line going north and south is the Big Four, the New York Central Big Four, and then here's the old depot, the Union Station Depot. And the line would continue up to Shawneetown, Illinois, where you could see that it would just... Yeah, all the rails at this point are pretty much gone for the L&N, except for McLeansboro all the way over here.
Alrighty, so let's start with a map here of the old B&O Springfield subdivision. This yellow line right here is the B&O Springfield subdivision where it would go. It would start all the way far, far up in northern Illinois and would head far, far south. It went from Beardstown, Illinois all the way to Shawneetown, Illinois. And it would cross over with some other big railroads. For example, in Beardstown, the B&O encountered the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. Later on, Burlington Northern. And then up in Pana, it would cross the Chicago and Eastern Illinois. While in Edgewood, it would cross over the Illinois Central. In Fairfield, the Southern. Enfield, the Louisville and Nashville, and so on. But anyways, today we are going to analyze the B&O Springfield subdivision, because this line is not talked about very often, and I'm going to go ahead and explain it for you guys. Alright, so there is not much information about the B&O. Now, there is not much information on the B&O. I don't even know how many trains a day they got. However, though, the B&O line did not seem very busy at all. It was probably busier in the 70s and 60s, but however, though, in the 80s, the line was starting to rot away. And for B&O train symbols, here's an example. There are two CSX trains that run on the Ohio sub called Q326 and Q327. In the days of the C&O, those trains were called 942 and 937. There's another set of trains on the CSX called Q334 and Q335. And on the B&O days, that would be called TL82 and GR83. B&O train symbols were unique, and they are kind of similar to NS and CN. They're similar to NS because they use numbers, and they're similar to CN because they use some letters and numbers. So, what trains ran on the B&O? Well, they did have passenger trains a very, very long time ago. But that was, I'm thinking, maybe in the 50s and back. Then later on, it just mainly became a freight line. I'm not sure on the exact amount of trains a day that ran on the B&O. These are photos of the Springfield local in Rochester, Illinois. The line was hardly ever busy in the 1980s because the tracks were starting to rot away and they were getting into bad shape, as you can tell in these photos. And weeds were growing around the tracks, and trains over there could only top 10 miles an hour. The Baltimore and Ohio was the only railroad to ever own this line right here. Well, that was until 1982. These three photos of the B&O local in Springfield, Illinois, that was the last year of the B&O operating on the line. Because in 1982, the Prairie Trunk Railroad, a short line, had taken over operations on the B&O. Instead of the line running from Beardstown, Illinois to Shawneetown, the line only ran from Flora to Shawneetown now. But the Prairie Trunk Railroad did not last long at all, because in 1985 there were too many miles on the line and not enough traffic, which doomed the Prairie Railroad, and so the line was abandoned in 1985.
From what I have heard too, I do believe that the Prairie Trunk Railroad had also went bankrupt, which caused the line out of service. This short line only lasted for 3 years, which is one of the shortest lasting railroads that I know of around here.